All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SEVAGOTH builds video with the update for SEVAGOTH. The update is basically that not much changed with SEVAGOTH with the Prime, but things have changed with SEVAGOTH otherwise that I hoped would be different for the actual release of the Prime so that we could go back to using a Shadow build. Unfortunately, this build is one that replaces his 4 with Roar, because we can get a lot more done that way. But I am also going to show a build that does still use the Shadow for those of you that enjoy it. Notably, before we get into the build itself, we do have Tau shards here. I'm using 3 strength Taus and then 1 health and 1 armor Tau. These two here, absolutely 100% to taste. They can be equilibrium shards. They can be casting speed shards. You can have parkour there. You can have a lot of, you have more strength than there already is on here. You can just do 100% strength. All absolutely valid, all reasonable ways to go. I've just decided to use some blues because it is a bit more comfy, especially at the beginning of missions. That is what I have gone with, but there are a ton of options for what those 2 shards can actually be. The 3 strength shards, I would keep at least this, though. If you do not have Taus, you could just do all regular strength shards, and that's going to work just fine, as that will add up to more than the strength that is present with these 3. So there's a lot of different ways to get there. You can also, kind of change the build a bit and remove some of the survivability or utility from the build and get your strength that way. With that, let's talk about the actual SEVAGOTH build, which looks like this. So, this is a build that basically uses both of his augments, both Dark Propagation and Shadow Haze, in order to cast his 2, cast Roar, and then use your Reap in order to blow up huge swaths of enemies and instantly kill them. The reason that this works is because So is applied to enemies, and then whenever you use Reap on them, it does 25% of their total health as damage to them, which is then increased by both the damage vulnerability that you get from Reap and is also increased by Roar. So you are trying to get to, instead of 25% of their health, all of their health, which is doable. At the very beginning of this amount of strength, though, you have 145% strength for everything except Roar, but because we're using Precision Intensify, that's actually at 235%. We have this nice 70% start on Roar, and after Molt Augmented is applied, which is another 60% strength, you get to the point where you can pretty much instant kill basically anything that you want to that is vulnerable to being damaged by this, which is quite good. Which means, after that, there's only a few things to shore up. Firstly, you do need a good bit of range for this. You could theoretically drop Augur Reach, but it's going to make the build a lot more clunky, and I would really suggest keeping both Augur Reach and Stretch, but you do technically only need Stretch. And energy economy, as we are at just basic efficiency, normal stuff. We have both Equilibrium and Primed Flow. Equilibrium, as I said, you could use 2 purple shards and then replace this with a mod of your choice. As long as that's not more duration, you're going to be fine, because notably, we are keeping duration absolutely static. The reason that that is important is because of the way Shadow Haze works. Shadow Haze has a new shadow emerges from enemies when they perish, limit of 3 total shadows. Because you have that limit, you do want them to actually be emerging from new enemies, and if you have too much duration, your shadows will last too long, because these last 10 seconds, which is just fine. You could actually go down a little bit if you wanted to use Transient Fortitude. I found that to be also fine. But you need the shadows to kind of fizzle out and have new shadows be created, because they will be in more beneficial, more enemy-filled areas as they keep going through hallways and finding new enemies, and new enemies are dying. So you do want to make sure you do not have too much duration, as that was an early mistake I made in terms of just trying to get this build to work, was even if you go to like 150-something duration, it's way too much and it fizzles out and causes a bunch of problems. So don't do that, but you definitely do not want to add duration shards to him either for that reason. And then Dark Propagation, while the Shadow Hazes are creating new shadows, you get the Dark Propagation, which is enemies that have So on them, when they are killed, they cast So again. Notably, this is bugged currently to use the basic stats from your shadow instead of using your stats. So you're not getting more than this 15-meter range like you should be right now, because it will try and use your shadow's stats, which does mean that for those of you that are not replacing his 4, you do have to mod your shadow for whatever stats you want the augmented effects of this to come from, but that's hopefully a bug and will be fixed. But for now, just treat this as if the additional So's cast after are all just like 15-meter radius, which works out just fine. And then, of course, we have adaptation on here. So Adaptation is the way that we're dealing with survivability. We're doing adaptation, which is a good amount of damage resistance, and we're doing arcane blessing, which adds us 1200 health once this is stacked up. And that is the reason why I added an armor shard and a health shard, because with the armor shard, we're up to almost 60% damage reduction, and we have, like, almost 600 health to start, which then goes to almost, 1800 health whenever we add that 1200, which is workable. Pretty decent. You'll have some good survivability. You'll have, like, roughly, on average, like, 90% DR against most things, which is pretty solid. You're not going to be, like, completely invincible or anything, but this is intended for you to mostly be killing everyone. And then, of course, we're using Prime Sure-Footed, which is completely optional in this build, but resisting knockdown is, of course, very, very good, as usually if you get knocked down, you will also then die. And then Growing Power, also optional in this build, but I do like the additional strength that you get from this. Especially if you're having, like, your Sentinel can proc this and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, this is reasonably survivable, but very good at wiping out large amounts of enemy, and it does work on enemies that have Overguard on them. It will kill overguarded enemies, which is very, very important, and this is kind of the balance that I have found for this. Now, for people that want to use the Shadow, similar build, but a little bit different. This is what I would go on, getting, of course, like, a little bit more duration. If you're not worrying about, like, using the augments and things like that, you do want a bit more duration, a bit more efficiency. That's where you can kind of fill some things in here. Looks very similar and performs like, as if you were using the Shadow instead, essentially, where this will be what you're going to kind of gravitate towards. The extra duration helps with, like, the gloom costs and things, as you're going to be wanting to leave SEVAGOTH's body around just with gloom on for longer periods of time, so it helps with that. And then from this, we, of course, have to mod the Shadow at that point. Worth noting, the base build here is 3 Forma, which is not so bad for a Warframe. But once we start getting into this, things get a little more expensive, but not too much with the Prime, as it's only 1 Forma to get a full Umbral build on SEVAGOTH. That being said, that 1 Forma is an Umbral Forma, so it will be, you're going to have to use an unleveled Umbral Fiber unless you do have an Umbral Forma to throw in here. But like I said, this is, like, kind of just a you want to use the Shadow, as the better build is the one that doesn't use the Shadow. So this is generally what I would gravitate towards, using both Fury and Strike for just buffing up our melee, getting more attack speed, getting more damage. And this just makes it so that you have Hunter Adrenaline is infinite energy in a lot of cases. This makes it so you can repeat cast a whole bunch. And then, of course, you have, like, a little bit of range and huge amounts of survivability and a little bit more duration, which the duration is mostly just to counteract the efficiency that you're getting from that. But yeah, and then we can move on down to the claws. The claws are a bit unfortunate. Still, we have, like, the Ravenous Wrath that is not giving us any points, which does mean I did use an Umbral Forma here as well. That is technically optional, because you could put even more Forma over here and have it be a 4 Forma build, which isn't great. Like, it's, it's not exactly fantastic to be spending, another 5 Forma, which is, 2 more than you spend on just SEVAGOTH himself to get the build going. But this build does work pretty well. This is kind of like a halfway build, where this is focused more on the heavy attacks using Melee Elementalist and Corrupt Charge. And of course, like, just getting all this going with, like, the reach and, like, all the things you usually just kind of need over here on the left, because unfortunately we can't access Blood Rush for no reason on Exalted weapons. And then we're going pure Heat, because the status on here is pretty good, and Heat is a good additional add that is effective against pretty much everything. So this is just where we are with this. You can, of course, add attack speed here, and if you do not have Arcane Strike, I would really, really suggest you do add attack speed here, because it's going to feel very slow otherwise. But I found this to be, like, a good, reasonable point, as long as you are running those melee arcanes on the Shadow itself. But yeah, otherwise, that's kind of what's up with SEVAGOTH. Obviously, we are not going to be showing this build off, because it just essentially does... It's the updated build of what the Shadow stuff was from the last time we did a SEVAGOTH video, and this is the new build. Now, notably, this does build up Molt-Augmented. Oh, also I am using Death Cube, just usual Death Cube things for a little bit of energy generation. I'm actually not using that in the, like, test you guys are going to see of me doing Steel Path stuff. I was still leveling, like, Nautilus and doing things like that, but Death Cube is, like, a more efficient choice for your energy economy being a bit better. But yeah, this is what we're going to... I've actually included 2 Eximus in here, which is what I've been testing this on, because I wanted to make sure it was working on them. So we are going to keep those guys in here, so keep that in mind, that there are some Eximus in here. Throw Gloom on, throw R2 on, and cast 1. Obviously, there can be some stragglers, which I'll just clean up with the Epitaph, who are at very, very low health. But generally speaking, you cast your 2, you cast your 1, and as long as Roar's on, everybody dies. And that gets more and more effective as you have Molt Augmented built up in Strength, which doesn't take very long. And in the testing that I've done, this can do, like, a very, very considerable KPM. Like, you can get almost 200 KPM, and in the right situation, I bet you could definitely get there. And it is quite nice. But that is the general loop. You want to have your 3 on, so Gloom is like giving you the lifesteal because this is kind of like a health tank build. And you're also, of course, going to be getting the slow on enemies. Before you have Molt Augmented built up, it's not a huge amount of slow, so you do want to make sure you turn it off and cast it again once your Molt Augmented is built. But then otherwise, you just want to make sure you press 4, and then press your 2, press your 1, and then it should just propagate and go throughout all of like the map and kill everybody, which is what you're going to see in the test that is going to be at the end of this video. But yeah, that's what's going on. That is SEVAGOTH, and with his new fashion, he's just red maging it up with Destreza. Notably, Destreza's here for nothing but fashion for any of you that are curious, but I do think that SEVAGOTH Prime looks very, very nice. Yeah, that's gonna do it for SEVAGOTH things. Enjoy the test, those of you on YouTube. We are also considerably we have considerably more time still on the streamathon timer, so if you were wanting to catch a bunch of this testing and stuff live, hey, that's where it happens with these 12-hour-a-day streams. Anyway, all right, let's test Red Mage SEVAGOTH. See what we can see. Give it another go. Make sure it's working consistently. Spian. This tile should actually perform better, which is wild. Oh, I will need some of you to drop energy, though. There we go. Enemies are over here. Spawn me some Xmas, please. Brothers. At least we can still use the shadow to get up, Jesus.
I delivered a life support capsule to the area. Activating it will buy you more time.
Being this unlucky definitely makes me want to bring a weapon that can generate energy. There we go. Here we go. Now we're cooking with gas. Now that we actually have energy. Jesus, so stingy.
I know what's wrong with it. Ain't got no gas in it.
That's correct. Much cleaner now. Much better. Then it'll get cleaner and cleaner as we get all of our augmented up now. There we go. Really rough start. Super weirdly unlucky start with the energy drops. I feel like that's like another good reason to like switch to Death Cube because we're still re-leveling Nautilus. Like I feel like Death Cube could have just solved that for us, you know what I mean? For 3 minutes, 537 kills. Not bad at all. Are you instantly killing enemies with this 1-2 combo before augmented's fully stacked? Most enemies, yes. Before augmented's fully stacked, it's like 2 enemies need to be standing near each other-ish. But, like, if I sacrifice the build for any more strength, I'm going to be in a position that will not be very nice. Where, like, I'll be hyper fragile. Like, you could drop adaptation and stuff, but, like, you probably really wouldn't want to. Just because there's other situations you're going to be in besides these enemies need to die, and building up augmented is really short. Survivability, kill things before they can kill you. See, that's... You can build that way. You can definitely build that way. But then when you run into something that's going to take a certain amount of time to kill, let's say, looking at you, every single one of the... attenuation enemies, and they're just going to kill you. That's 5 minutes, 877 kills. Very good. It's definitely like hard requires roar. I think there's like basically no way you're getting here without roar. A glass cannon's great until it encounters something that doesn't die in one hit. Yep. That's why this is nice, because like if you look at my health now that we've been going a little bit, Blessing has been built up, so I have 1,700 health. I have an armor shard in, so I have like 60% DR, plus adaptation, so like, you know, pretty good. So we have like roughly 90% DR between adaptation and our armor, which is like okay. It's like fine. Not the best thing in the world in terms of survivability, but we can get hit and not instantly evaporate. And if we do instantly evaporate, our shadow might be able to get us to stand up, which is what we saw in like the beginning of the mission. That was more so that we just did not have our energy economy started. Funnily enough, like there's like some kind of an argument for preparation on this build, but like, you probably just could bring any weapon that generates energy instead. If we replace the blue Tau HP with more blue Tau armor, you could. I think having like a little bit more starting HP is really nice though. Just to make the beginning of your runs easier, and like the beginning of your runs is the most like kind of a weird mid flex points. It's like an option though. The extra strength out of Grimoire, and it would fix some energy stuff too. Well, you can't use double Grimoire mods. You can do strength or energy. It's only Dante that can use multiple of those Grimoire mods. Well, multiple of, like, the big ones, anyway. Unless you are Dante. Now, how am I going to get SEVAGOTH's abilities onto Dante? I'm trying to figure that one out. He does not like it. Hey, we level his energy on the ground over here. It's my favorite thing. Kill them all, Shadows. No one expects the Shadow Inquisition. Almost at that glorious 10 minutes. To see what our KPM is. I'm trying slightly harder than I was. Alright, time's up. 17:55. Quite good, especially considering our, like, you know, rougher than I'd like start. What another? There is a door here. There is a door here. I'm crazy. It's bigger numbers than Saren. Tile set dependent. It's definitely right around there, though. Yeah, that's very good, though. That's very good. Told us to sacrifice raw stats due to double augments. Yeah, absolutely. Double augments, like, absolutely necessary for it to work. But it worked. Yeah, Saren gets to not do a lot of the things that this build does have to do as well. Yeah, nice. All right, we're back from TennoCon, and the Streamathon is going to continue. But there will, of course, I will try and have there be videos as well as the Streamathon at the same time, if I can. Also, thank you to the $10 patrons, Athean, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Benuven, Fruta Salazar, Canalafra, Club World 3, Dylan Dworsky, Athrain, Afan, James Hearthstone, JC4 Science, Josh, Lou Zanth, Malik X Williams, Mark Smith, Mikakel, Minty Ginja, Mitchta, Nerve, Ruby, Sanyu, Skur, Sharp247, Tamrielic Wastelander, Tester ZWP, The Coupon of Death, Comeworm, Victor Palmer, Waifu Wars, Wowdata1, and Sarah Fear. And of course, all of my other patrons as well. It is incredibly appreciated for all of your support. But yeah, we're gonna try and keep the videos a little bit more regular while the Streamathon continues. And of course, we do have a free-to-play through coming soon.